Thank you so much for joining and welcome to this week's Product People event. Before starting, please remember that you can watch this stream on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitch. Also, a reminder that this talk will be recorded. So, if you want to revisit it, if you want to share it with your colleagues, you want to share it with your friends, please feel free to go to our YouTube channel and do that. We will also have a Slido running for you to give us some insights and ask questions directly to the speaker as we go. You can see this on the screen. We will also share this later on. So, yeah, feel free. Today, we'll be talking about product management, particularly within the public sector, which I think is quite a rare topic. It's not really discussed quite enough. It's not discussed super often, so I think we're in for quite a ride and tons of learning. Simone Killian will be joining us for today's talk and sharing her knowledge with us. I'll be introducing her shortly and handing it over to us, to her. But before we proceed, let me briefly introduce myself and product people. So my name is Amna Jan Khatak. I actually have a background in supply chain management, but around 3 years ago, I switched over to the beautiful world of product management. I've since had some experience in ed tech, death tech, cybersecurity, and mobility. So, really working on a lot of things there. I've had a bunch of exposure. If I am to tell you a little bit about what we do at Product People, especially for those of you who are new here, our mission is to help companies discover and deliver great products faster. We do interim product management, empower our product management community to share knowledge generously while managing the hands on work of a product manager, a product owner, a product ops, or product leaders on a fractional basis. We onboard fast, align teams, and deliver great outcomes thanks to our in house team. We also curate free events just like this one for one of the biggest PM communities in Europe with over 60,000 members, of which you are all a part. Before we start, we want to get to know you a little bit better, and we want to do an icebreaker before we start the session. So we have a question for you. You can open slido.com and enter the number that you see on screen, and you can also scan the QR code to let us know. For the ones watching on other platforms, please also feel free to share your answers in the comments, and we'll keep a track of those. So the question is, what is the biggest difference between a citizen and a customer? Let us know what you think. But the options are A, citizens do not have alternatives. B, higher trust expectations. C, there are more constraints such as policy or compliance. Or D, there isn't really a difference. So while we wait for a few of these answers to come in, maybe I share a little bit about what I think. And again, having not that much to do with the public sector and customers within the public sector, I think that it really falls down to D, but that is my opinion. I think that is because at the end of the day, whether it's a citizen, whether it is a customer, the person that you are building for really needs to be kept in mind. And that is what you should consider. So I think that maybe the answer is D. However, I believe that maybe we could also lean towards C, where there may be more, more constraints, more legal restrictions over there, more issues of legality. But that's what I think. Let me know what you think, or what your preferred answer here would be, Simone.
Yes, like you said it, I would absolutely agree. My first intention was it's all four, because like you said, on the one hand, we treat the citizens as every user in the private sector, to understand their needs and pains, but also the public sector has some special systemic constraints, so to say, that, like you said, there is no often an alternative where the citizen can go. Yeah, you need and want to trust your state, and also, yeah, there's a bigger constraints with regards to the laws, the policy, the data protection at times.
Absolutely, that makes sense. So I'm also assuming that that also means that as a PM within the public sector, you would also need to take higher measures to make sure that the customer, or in this case, the citizen, can actually trust the end product, right?
Exactly.
Perfect. So I'm also seeing that we do have a few answers coming in. it seems to be leaning towards the option that I'd chosen, which is there is no real difference. But I'm also super, super grateful for, the input that you've given here, which was super insightful. It's interesting to know that citizens would also, in essence, need a higher degree of trust that needs to be built up. Ooh, we have more answers coming in. So right now it stands at a 50% split between citizens do not really have alternatives and 50% at option D, which is that there is no real difference. I'm sure that in the slides to follow, you'll be enlightening us about how it is all of the above. With that being said, and without further ado, I am happy to welcome Simone Killian, who has been a product manager at DigitalService since mid 2022, where her focus is primarily on consistent orientation towards user insights. Previously, she worked in various industries on the digitization of companies. She's worked in medium sized businesses as well as in the Munich startup scene. Since becoming a fellow at Tech for Germany in 2021, she developed a passion for administrative digitization, and she's here to share her knowledge with us today. With that being said, over to you, Simone.
Nice. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. Yes, great. And now I'm turning blue. I'm very happy today to talk to you. Also, welcome from me to talk to you today about the public services that work for everyone. You already heard my introduction, so I'm gonna skip this one. But yeah, I'm Simone and working since 5 years in the public administration. And today I'm very happy to dig a bit deeper into my daily work and also what you can take away from all of this learnings from the public sector to also to the private sector. We'll be looking at 3 things. First is we already started a bit in our icebreaker that how the public administration is thinking and its mindset is also shaping a lot when you want to work in this industry. And then, once we understood this, we will look how to transform this mindset more into the digital first and user centric way of working, and overcome the burdens of bureaucracy, and in the end, how you can adapt this to these learnings to the product management in the private sector. Woohoo! Like already been said, I'm working specifically in the private sector, in the public sector of Germany. And not sure how many of the audience had to deal with the private sector in Germany, but in case you don't know, it really in Germany, in the public sector, we really still at the point of replacing paper and more going into this digital era and thinking about data, but not at all in the area of AI, for example. And you might now wonder, behind in what? It's especially in the digital government, and you can see this in this number. 33% of the citizens of Germany use the internet to interact with the government services, and if you compare it to the European average, it's 65%. And we in order to change it, we need to understand why is that? What's the difference in the public administration? And maybe also why is it not that different to the private sector, especially if you think about big companies and how to do product management in big corporations, it might be similar. But also, in why do large-scale digital projects in the public sector also keep failing? And one very easy answer of course we'll dig deeper, is that the public administration is structured in a way that it does not change. What do I mean by that? Let's have a look at the like 5, I called it mechanisms, that the public sector is, let's have a look at the psychology, how the public sector is thinking and working, which leads to this, behaviors and problems. One of them is the loss aversion. Applied in the administration, it means that people a mistake we don't have, in Germany at least, we don't have a big error culture. This means that a mistake can more jeopardize the career and the reputation, or invite political criticism than a successful project. This then, of course, is then like rather you want to avoid making mistakes than trying to be successful. And in these consequences for the project are that decisions are very much avoided or delayed. People play it rather safe and use familiar solutions, and the new approaches seem risky. And it's often rather the mindset is that what brings the greatest benefit instead of like what minimizes the question is not what brings the greatest benefit, but rather what minimizes the likelihood of being blamed. And the second is the diffusion of responsibility. When many people are involved and no one feels like solely responsible, and in an administrative context, this leads to typical behavior that decisions are deferred to committees. There are a lot of people involved. I will come to that in a second, also in an example. And this responsibility is distributed across the organization. And the benefit is here that if criticism arises later, it's very hard to find someone to be held responsible or to be blamed, like I said, with the loss aversion. And looking at the German digital landscape, you see this diffusion of responsibility on a systemic level. There's a very fragmented landscape, and it's very hard to grasp. There's a little uniformity of action because in Germany you have federalism, but also you have on the one hand the states, the ministries, you have Europe in place. And many have services at local authority level, state level, and central services. And the reuse is very difficult. And it's also hard action to harmonize things between all these parties. But this diffusion of responsibility also continues to be within the entities themselves. We've always done it this way, adds up to this. So people prefer rather familiar situations than change. And I think here is especially different to how product-minded people think. In the project work, it manifests as follow that existing processes are rather replicated digitally than fully thought from the users, and radical simplifications feel threatening, and rather we keep the thing is that we really rather keep historical special cases to cover it all than to remove them. And so the underlying logic is the familiar complexity feels safer than the unfamiliar simplification. And then adding to this one, there's a certain conflict avoidance, especially in the hierarchical organizations that we look at. The lower levels often have less decision-making autonomy. This means that decisions are often escalated upwards. This takes long. The intermediate level play it rather safe. And last but not least, a key psychology driver is the reputation management. Like I said, if you only can go up the career ladder by not making mistakes, It's also very hard to admit or to ask once you don't know certain things. So the communication is very cautious. Everything is documented, or rather more documented than the actual focus on the success. And people avoid taking clear personal positions, or even admitting if they don't know certain things. What does this all result in? This is decisions are made very slowly. The consultation processes take very long. You might wonder, why is it also increasing demands? The problem is that increasing demands in documentation, in communication. If more and more people are involved in the process, with Conway's law, you have to align even more. And I would say that's everything a product person doesn't like. What's very important to say here is that behind the system, there's always people who are very diverse and varied. They also therefore deserve to be recognized as key players within the system that made this this public administration system, that made these constraints. The people working in the public administration often are very smart, and it's the response to this institutional incentive and psychological perception of risk. And what we try to enable them is to change this also mindset through delivering good products, through showing user-centered way of working, to address these mechanisms. But how does this manifest itself in my day-to-day work? And for that to be a bit more rather not so theoretically and more hands-on example, I need to give some context about the project I'm working on. When you think about public administrations, it could be anything from identifying yourself, from tax processes, over what else? Childcare support, but also a big part of the democracy, and big part of the public administration is the law, and everything that's connected to the law area. And the project I'm working on is a new federal information system, and the project is to develop a comprehensive legal information system in order to support the documentation of laws and decisions, but also making all of them accessible and available to the public. What are we talking about? It's a big migration project of over 2.5 million data points from an old legacy system. And the goal is to have an now coming also to what can be then done with all of this data, is having an open API, so that both expert but also non-experts in law can analyze the legal data that we have in Germany, and for example, making it usable for AI cases, but also the research, the law students, for example, and so on. Let's dig even more into it. If we talk about legal information, what is that? I just need to have a sip of water. What is that? We talk about laws. So, for example, laws about not working overtime. Then, if a case decision is whenever a judge is, for example, deciding, hey, you worked too long and your employee shouldn't have allowed that. An administrative directive is the rules a ministry has to follow. It's a very specific case, and the literature is that all of the laws, but also the case law decisions, are discussed in journals. And basically, what you can think of is that we make a big knowledge graph out of all these data, because a case law often is based on laws. Literature is discussing a new law, which maybe leads to an updated law, and so on. And yes, looking at it from a from a how to say who are the users perspective, and also coming back to the question, how is it what is the difference between the citizen and the user? We have to understand how this the public administration is. You can also look at it from a B2B and B2C perspective, or B2B to C perspective, because we have on the one side here the courts are documenting the case laws, the norms, the directives, and the literature. I'm sorry, a bit too dry air in my room. And all of them have people working in the courts to document these, and in order to follow a standard and how to say making the data structured, they need to have the same interfaces to work with the data. That's basically the B2B part. And then, wrong side. All of this data is then transferred into the public portal. And the mission is that right now in the previous system, the data is partially locked behind a paywall owned by a private company. But of course, in order to make people trust the public, trust the state, and trust trust the state, our mission is to change that, and we want to bring the data back to the public free of charge, and easy to process. And that's then the B2C part. For me specifically, the documentation offices are the users. So my look at it is more from the B2B part. And I already said it a bit. What's fascinating me about the work in the public administration is that it's on the one hand the people. These was a visit at the court. The people working there often do this the whole lifetime. We had once a check-in about, hey, what was the first workplace you did? And most of them said that they work at the court since 20, 30, 40 years. And they're very tedious and very, how to say, clear with their work. And my goal is that it's very nice to see how to ease their tedious manual and repetitive parts of their work, so that the actual fruits of their work and the actual juice is produced faster and more productive. Point. A second, I also kind of said it already, the state and the democracy has to build trust. You said it also in the icebreaker question. Only if the citizens feel that, and when I say citizens, I also mean the citizens working internally in the public administration, that the products work, that they can then that makes this feel the people trusting the state more. And also it's an important step towards this. And last but not least, it's also great to get good feedback. This was another project, but we've received it on X, or Twitter, I think, at the time. That getting good feedback, seeing that things work is just nice, especially like some of you also wrote on a big scale. People don't even have an alternative sometimes, so it's great if people see that it works. And last but not least, if it would be so easy to change all these things, a lot of people, it probably would have been done already. And I like a good challenge. And at my project, we have 3 of them, and I'm going to focus on one. The first is that all the data that has to be migrated, there's that's very has to being brought into a structured way alongside the migration. Then we have the public portal. There, both non-experts and experts are working not working, are looking at the data, and we need to make sure to meet both expert and non-expert requirements. And the last challenge is that with, like I said, most government project, the expectation is waterfall and predictability and long timelines. And like you might also know, a good plan is often valid only 1 or 2 weeks, and then we have to change it again. And that's working against, no, that's not how it works in the public sector. And my example today is how we came from design by committee to a helpful user feedback. And I want to like show you how these like 5 mechanisms manifest in my day-to-day work, and how we tackle them on a very easy way. So first, the problem that we had was is very simple. We did a review we do a review every 2 weeks, but the review felt like a waste of time. You might know that feeling. But in order to understand why it felt like a waste of time, let's have a look at the setting. This picture is on purpose very unstructured and very with a lot of people on it, because we operate in a very diverse stakeholder landscape, and we must continually reconcile differing interests regarding scope, time, and budget, and find a common path. So who are the people in the review call for us? We have a budget owner in one ministry, then talking about diffusion of responsibility, we have a business owner in another entity, and external testers. So these are, you have to understand, not quality QS engineers we have in our team, so that's the middle. We have a continuous testing pipeline, but the external testers are more, I would say, for this part of documenting that everything works, that the process is followed, instead of looking at, is it actually what the users need. That's what why we do regular user testings, but also it's very hard to get this ingrained into the normal structure. And then last but not least, you have like I said, we have the B2B part, we have the courts. And here, that's why I also did always this like people on top. You have to understand that there are certain hierarchies in place. So you have the bosses, they actually look at the status quo. They don't want anything to really change a lot. They all currently work with different softwares. The bosses on the one hand report back to the budget owner if everything works fine, but they are not the budget owners themselves. And we have the users of the software that, with these hierarchies at place, often avoid the conflicts, or avoid saying something in the call. Also, some of them have this like loss of reputation fear, because of the tech knowledge. And you have to know the setup evolved or like over a course of time, and eventually more and more people joined, and it became more and more unclear about the roles and responsibilities within the setup. I brought up this picture again because this is what the review felt at a certain point. We have many parties, many hierarchies, different motivations. Maybe, like I wrote down like maybe like a classical big project. And on top, looking at the mood, the bigger the group got, the more people turned off their cameras, making it feel even more awkward. It turned out that often more the bosses of the courts were talking than actual users, and it was more based on assumptions than on the actual usage. And what happened? We had groupthink happening. For those who don't know, groupthink is that one person was addressing, for example, the color of a label or the name of a label, and then everyone agreed, or also the discussion became very on certain things that are really, like, I would say, not the most painful at the moment. So, for example, where a certain input field has to be put, instead of looking at does the whole process work, is it used, do people reach the goal? Exactly. So there was this, it was unclear about what are ideas, what is a real pain, what are needs, and that to conclude this, what happened in the end, it felt like a wasted time because there was a noise. By the end of the review, we felt a bit like, actually, we didn't really celebrate it, what we achieved, and also the feedback that we received was more like a potential wishes. It was not really clear what is a pain. And we had also the team became frustrated and demotivated by that. Wouldn't be, how to say, agile if we don't try to change that. So we remembered, hey, we want to gain more insights and feedback from the actual users, but we have these psychology patterns at place. Like I said, we do use the testing, but it's still often continues to be, hey, we are already in the review, we don't need user testing, we know already everything. Isn't it good enough if we all consent, agreeing, discussing things in the review? Of course, there's a lot of things undetected if you don't do it at like a presentation and review. And then, so we were like, how can we get more out of our review in the setup that we are? And that's why we introduced a new structure for the review, and we sneaked user testing into it. Let me explain what we did. We at first did the known product demo. This was in order to address the status quo bias and to give transparency, not making anyone feel that we want to hide anything. And the second part, in order to get more to the juice and to understand if it's usable, we did one-on-one user testing. And I wrote, yes, even the devs, because you remember we were 6 or 7 people in the team. And with that, we optimized that we also get 6 or 7 either different or the same feedback on the new developed product or a feature, not product. And now looking at, I showed you these are some screenshots from the Miro board. It's in German, but the actual part was that it was very important that we ended the official part friendly but direct. We were like addressing the showing the thing part, and then also saying, hey, now thank you. Please give us the feedback via mail or via in one of our next meetings. But please now everyone that's not doing this and that task can leave. For the public administration, you have to understand that it was very important to make the barrier as low as possible. We're really talking to people that are not that familiar with certain technologies. So we very transparently explained what's happening next, why we do that. We for example posted in a chat, we posted via email, and also on this Miro board how to get to certain calls. We wrote an email before in order to get them mentally prepared. And for the stakeholders to understand what is happening, we were making the notes on the boards transparent and always accessible, but yet anonymous. So both for the testers, but also the budget owner and the business owners, it's still they were able to see what's happening. And at a later point, because we did that every 2 weeks, we also enabled the stakeholders to also go into one-on-one sessions in order for them to also understand what the users, how they interact with the product. And this was this helped us tremendously. It felt so simple, but yeah, it on the one hand it gave transparency, but the one-on-one testing gave the people that were in one of the actual users the place to feel safe and give the real feedback, also to ask questions about certain things because they sometimes didn't understood what it means. And also it's also we as a development team understood more their mental model, and we got a way better understanding of the law because it's also its own language. So it was a safe space, I would say, for both sides. And so we addressed both the loss aversion and the status quo bias with keeping the first part, but also address the diffusion of responsibility in terms of for us to get better, to find then patterns and more prioritization. We didn't need to wait for certain decisions because we could more fact-based explain why we think that certain problems shall be addressed earlier. And conflict avoidance, people felt safe to tell what they like and what not, and what works and what not, if their boss was or is not in the call and checking them. But same protection of reputation, both for the ones in the one-on-one session, but also for the stakeholders, was addressed with making it transparent, but still in the one-on-one session you can like talk freely. And to finish it up, this is the end of the journey into the public administration and specifically into the law area, but not era. And what you can take away from all of this, besides some nice insights into the public administrations in Germany, is that it's very important to analyze the culture that you're dealing with. But so that's important. But also on top, it's so important to identify the leverage points and where can like this small win of changing the review create enough trust and like a major policy shift. So in order to however your organization that you're working in is working, you can maybe like something like this tiny change make a bigger change. Humanize the bureaucracy, find ways to bring the team face to face with the people they serve is in the product management. I think not a new concept, but for us, enabling this process, then also enable to also get the stakeholders more involved once they then did the one-on-one sessions, and it made the stakeholders see the citizens struggle in real time. And then I would say a requirement transforms into empathy, and that is very important. And finally, how can you lean more, even more good enough testing into your development? We, especially in the public sector, heavyweight validation is a thing. So we have still sometimes releases, and my question to you is that you could ask yourself how you could integrate more user testing with low effort and maybe not perfect into your delivery. And that's it from my talk. And I should maybe, I'm now very blue. I would now like to open the room for questions. And thank you for listening, and hope you all learned something new about public administration.
Perfect. Thank you so much. First of all, that was super, super insightful. So I'm sure that everybody else learned a lot as well. I already learned a lot as well. And it's very interesting how there's parallels between public administration and then also the parallel between the private sector, where a lot of larger companies do suffer a little bit from similar problems, right? We've always done it like this. Things
Mhm.
like that, really convincing people that they should be using this different process of doing things. And also just how the larger I think the company gets, in a lot of cases, the more bureaucracy gets built up, and it gets closer to dealing with a lot of these similar problems. So I think even if some of our viewers are not really dealing with the public sector, they have a lot to learn and a lot to apply in both spaces, so thank you, that was amazing. We're going to begin our Q&A session now, but we're going to give everybody a little bit of time to answer, to like jot down their questions, send them in on our Slido. So feel free to go to our Slido. You can either use the number, go to slido.com and use the number that you see on screen, or just scan the QR code. Share your questions, share your comments. I'll give you a little bit of time to type in your questions, and meanwhile, I'll go over a few more slides about product people, just to let you know what our use cases are, things of that sort. So if we are to talk, so feel free to please just drop your questions over there. I'm going to get back to the Q&A session right after this. So let's talk about some of the use cases when you may want to work with us. Our interim product managers and owners cover parental leaves, other sorts of leaves, scale your product management team quickly, or lead key initiatives while bridging the gap until like a full-time resource or employee joins. With us, you can get temporary help to drive product discovery and delivery for deadlines and create big impacts in short time. You can also, we can also help with coaching your product management team to reach their full potential through streamlining processes from 0 to 1, including product ops and product management. We can also assist you with running discovery to uncover your next big initiative or feature. Yeah. Here you can see some of our B2C clients that we have worked with. We've worked with quite a bunch of clients, both B2C as well as B2B. So a few of these you can see on screen. Some of the ones that we've worked with are eBay, Tier, FreeNow, DeepL, a lot more than this list over here, given that we have worked with over 100 companies at this point. When it comes to B2B clients, we have also worked with a bunch of companies, including some like the World Health Organization, Sastrify, a bunch more, JetBrains, whatnot. So a bunch of really, really diverse industries and diverse experiences here. Last but not least, before we move into questions, and I do have a few of my own as well, I'd like to share a few of our stats related to product people with you. We have supported over 690 cross functional teams and over 130 clients from Series A startups to publicly listed companies at this point. We have an in house team of 40 product leaders and product managers to deliver high quality services to all of our clients. And we take great pride in the fact that we have a 59% workforce made up of women, with 60% in leadership roles, which is very exciting. And I'm very happy to share that with all of you. With that being said, I'm going to move towards the Q&A. We already see that some questions are coming in and some questions have been shared as we've gone. So I'm just going to share these with you, Simone. Feel free to unmute yourself and answer. So if you had to choose, when do you prioritize compliance over user experience, and how do you make that call? Super interesting question.
It's a very, very, very good question.
Yeah.
And when I think about it, I have the feeling, or my first answer would be, like I said, the trust for the citizens to have in the state. For me, is kind of ingrained in the, like, you want to have a good user experience, and it also means I can trust the state that it's not messing with my data. So in order to me, for me, it goes a bit hand in hand, compliance and a good user experience. Yeah, I would say the user experience in the end, if I would had to make the call, would be this one. But often the being compliant is kind of ingrained into this, especially as we talk about the state not losing the trust, and no, the citizens never shall lose the trust into the state.
Makes
That
sense.
would be my, yeah.
It's really a fine balance, I guess, between making sure that you're compliant, but then simultaneously making sure that the user has a good enough experience that this is actually useful to them and that they continue using this, not just because it's mandatory, but because it's genuinely useful to them. Which
Exactly.
yeah, which leads into a question that I actually had. So as product managers, especially within more private firms, we rely heavily on product marketing, right? In order to convince customers, in order to convince users of the benefits that are available to them. I'm wondering what is done of the same sort in the public sector to convince users that this will actually be useful to them. I know that they're very comfortable, set in their ways, so that might be a tricky one.
Mm, yeah, I think that's again coming back to the initial question. Often the users don't have an alternative. So the problem is we don't measure in how to say marketing in terms of how many people do we bring to finish the process. It's rather when we look at the matrices, we try to optimize first that it's that we look at, does it have a easy, clear, understandable language? Is it do the people actually find the services that they need? And I think that we do with interviews and going and out talking to the citizens. And in the end, the matrices that we look at is we have to optimize actually for people finishing the process because if that doesn't work out, the people lose probably certain benefits from the state or they don't do they should finish. So I think the marketing is we also, of course, we have a growth mindset in this, that we need to the citizens to find the services, and there does that answer your question? Hamna?
Yeah, I think that
Yeah.
it does. That being said, you also mentioned tracking a few metrics instead to actually track whether or not it's been useful, right? And I'm wondering, in the context of the current project that you gave us an example of, what sorts of metrics were you tracking over there?
Mhm. Um, so in the migration project itself, the biggest metric is the having all data complete migrated.
Mhm.
And the second is in user tests of the portal, so of the citizen-facing side. How do we put feedback posts? How to say feedback? Uh, Feedback
Surveys?
questions in
Oh.
each basically site, finding out how people like found certain subpages for certain how do they search for the information that they need, and uh, what else? So one is the data so to say fullness, Vollständigkeit. I don't know what's the term in English. That it's complete. And the second is the quality of the data. That's a bit harder to measure.
Mhm.
Um, that you can not that there you need the input of legal of law people. And then on the portal itself, the feedback is okay. We also look at how where do people how do they search, what do they find, with a very specific search, with a very fuzzy search. And then we have an open API, and there we also can then track and see how do people give feedback on that API. That's more for the developers side. Um,
Makes
yes,
sense.
yeah.
And then you were also mentioning how you do want to make sure that it is a usable product. So are you also tracking any usability metrics along the way? Maybe drop offs at a certain point or things like that, or is that not as relevant here?
Uh, it depends on the project, but especially if it's a service that people apply to, it's very important. Especially so not at the one I'm working now, but at other project, it's often the identification part that people fail, and then you have to dig deeper there. You have to analyze if you want to improve certain processes, where are the media breaks, because that's in German government, unfortunately, still a lot of times the case that at a certain point you get a letter, or you have to sign something on paper, and then you have to see how much it does come back, or how many do apply for getting a certain level, and how many then manage to follow the process after that. So yeah, dropout rates and success rates are I would say the two main important ones in most services.
Yeah, makes sense. So it just varies based on the type of project that it is, but generally you would set up success metrics very similarly to how you would in other firms. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
perfect. And then this one is interesting because you'd already mentioned how good discovery is a little difficult, especially in the public sector where maybe you do not have access to the customers directly. There's maybe a little bit of bureaucracy, red tape. So, in this particular sector, could you maybe give us a brief definition of how good discovery looks?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Um,
Or how you navigate that, maybe. Yeah.
yeah. Because also there, I think it's not very different to the private sector. It depends on what the context is, but the more you expose yourself to users, or to the potential users, the better. We often start with how to say desk research on depending on the topic. I don't know what solutions are already out there, what are the users, who are the stakeholders, sometimes mapping them, and then the access to the users. Either we can try to recruit, or we can recruit them very well, but if not, we also sometimes already just went out and were asking people on the street. It depends very much also on the project partner from the ministries. Mostly, I think that's where we try to enable our project partners to understand the value of user research. Yeah, and I think the we have a user research department at ours, that's then also trying to making that even more measurable and comparable, and yeah uh, so
Makes
uh,
sense.
I guess it depends on how what the limitations are in the end. Yeah.
So we have an interesting question coming in here, which you can let me know what you think over here. But the question that's come in is, what problems do you think governments should not try to solve digitally?
Mm, um, oh yeah, that's a good question. I think what we have to consider, for me personally, is that we shouldn't do a digital only. When we think about digital services, we should think about digital first.
Mhm.
But especially when we talk about making services for everyone, there are people that are not able to use or don't have access to technology, or don't have the knowledge. So there always should still be cases for them to go somewhere in case that's not possible for them. And then I would say, I mean, yeah, there are, of course, the state actually, it would be good, the how to say, if the state uh, is not this is the best service is the service that the user or the citizens doesn't have to actually apply for, or actually do something for. So it's of course there are so many parts that the private sector is for. Also, I mean, we'll say about the fun part, the consumer part. The state is not making the money. It should rather enable the people to get the money, the information they need, or making things easier. So it's a very tough question what the state should not do. There's a lot of things that it shouldn't do. It should just try to make actually to make it less of a burden to the citizens. Yeah.
So with a lot of these processes, you would say that the idea is digital first, or at least having digital options available, but to cater to a particular subset that maybe does not have these options or is not as tech savvy. They should have the other options available as well, right? Yeah,
Exactly.
that makes sense. First of all, also everybody is really, really appreciating all of the insight that you've given them. We still have questions flooding in on Slido, so I'll share a few more, probably the last two or three before we stop.
Mhm.
But yeah, so one of the questions that's come in is when you initiated these one-on-ones, right? So these are after the demos, you initiated these one-on-ones. Was this an act now and ask for permission later situation? How did you navigate this, especially in public or confidential sectors?
Um, uh, do you mean by this question that so the thing is, yeah, we yes, we operate always a bit in this like how much can we like how to say stretch the way of working. So yes, we were aware it could be there could have happened a backlash. So that's why we and I have to be transparent. Some people in the call were still like very skeptical about, hey, what do you talk on about this in the one-on-ones? So that's why we prepared also this like, hey, we summarize the findings, everything's on the board. We prepared the email before, so it was more. We just did it and were like confronting us with some critique, but in the end, the most of the people in the call were like appreciating the setup, both from also the internal team, but also the users. I think because we then often in follow-up sessions addressed our this is what we found out in the 5 sessions, and that's why we did that and that also with the stakeholders. So yeah, it was a the thing is that we it's a bit of a you always have to it's not maybe not as easy as like in a startup where you go don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, but we it has to have a balance. That's why we're like introducing this like small change.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you did need to maybe ask for some approvals there, but all in all, it was a risk you were willing to take. Yeah. It's
Exactly.
it's it's really nice to see that even, firms in the public sector are embracing sort of that startup mindset, which I
Mhm.
think that your experience brought a lot into that. Just reading about it, I'm sure that you had a lot to bring in there. I think we'll just go on to really the final question before we end
Mhm.
this. There are a few more questions. We'll share those with you later on. Maybe you could answer them. We'll answer them in the comments and whatnot. But yeah, so the last question is, can you share more about why such data was initially behind a paywall and what enabled the shift to now, where you've decided to make this publicly available and really make everyone's lives easier?
Yeah. So it's super. So the easy answer is there has been a court decision that said, hey, it's public data. It shall be public, which is great. And the data was behind. You have to know part of the data. Um, a lot of the data of the so the actual text, I would say, was or is public,
Mhm.
but there's the company that enabled the courts to type in the data. They so to say had the right to keep certain say benefits. So that's, for example, what I said about the knowledge graph, how all of these things point to each other. These information was not on the is not on this like for free version, and then the court, one court, the Bundesgerichtshof decided, hey, no, this shall all be publicly available and also is, so say, owned by the state.
Mhm.
And the reason why the company itself that did the paywall part used to be a company by the state and then became private, and that's how it evolved. And
Mhm.
then the court decision came to, in order to be sovereign of this company. Yeah.
Perfect. Definitely the right decision. I hope that your work, and I'm sure that it is, I'm sure that it's helping a lot of people who are working in these roles. And yeah, thank you for all of your work. Also, thank you for all of your knowledge that you've shared with us today. Um,
Thank you.
with that, it's a wrap. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you so much, Simone, for your answers. That is all for today. We'd
Cool.
also like to mention as we log off that we are hiring for associate product manager and product manager roles. We have these open. You can apply by scanning the QR code on screen or finding our recruitment online, of course. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe to our newsletter if you haven't already. This is where we share insights and experiences in products that we've gained from our missions or with different clients. And I am part of the newsletter initiative, so I would love if you could give it a follow. Yeah. With that, we are done. Make sure to join us next week. Coming up next week, we will be talking about transforming the product organization for AI. I feel like we touched a little bit upon that today as well, where we are really preparing the landscape, getting all of this data migration done in order to enable maybe further down the line AI enablement, right? But yeah, we'll be talking about something similar next week, which is transforming the product organization for AI. Alex will be joining us. Make sure that you join us as